Explain to me a little bit. You're talking to someone that only knows this much about Fred Harvey and Mary Coulter.
And the decision was made at that time that maybe they should remove men and bring in women.
So the Harvey girls are standing on the corner of Winslow, Arizona before the Eagles.
I either shut this down or I get involved.
Welcome to the Rumble with John Smith and Matt the Bulldog Bollinger. What's going on, Matt?
Not a whole lot, John.
Hey, who's our guest today?
Kathy Weir.
Oh, I know Kathy Weir. She's that expert.
Yep, she's the expert.
She's the expert. Hi, Kathy. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. What would you say you're an expert on?
Oh, I would say I'm more a generalist.
A generalist?
I have a strong interest in history and particularly Arizona. I moved here in 1971, and it's the best decision we ever made.
So I have to give a big shout out to our friend of the show, Roger Naylor. He's the one that told us about you, but unfortunately he didn't tell you about us. And so when we called for you to be on the show, you kind of were scratching your head. You graciously accepted, but that's for you, Roger. I just wanted you to know. But so really one of the reasons I'm excited about having you on here is because I do have a lot of love for the Grand Canyon. And one of the things at the Grand Canyon that they really, really show, and it's really, really out there, is the Harvey girls. If you, I think they have a museum in there small of the Harvey girls, or did they do that at one time?
It's a history museum in Bright Angel Lodge. They have a history room, and they highlight Fred Harvey, Mary Coulter, the Grand Canyon, and in that room is an incredible fireplace. Do you know about the fireplace?
I don't know about it, but I know it's incredible.
What is incredible about it is that Mary Coulter had it designed with the stones that are in the fireplace replicate the exact levels within the Grand Canyon.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Wow, that is pretty.
It is amazing.
So Mary Coulter and Fred Harvey, are they just married in history? Do they have relations to each other? Did Mary work for Fred? Or is that totally two different times? Explain to me a little bit. You're talking to someone that only knows this much about Fred Harvey and Mary Coulter.
Well, Fred Harvey, of course, he came from England and started working in, they called them pot scrubbers in a restaurant.
Been there.
And he eventually, make a long story short, developed a relationship with the Santa Fe Railroad to develop eating houses along the railroad as it expanded into the west.
So I used to live in Atchison, Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
Which is where the Topeka and Santa Fe.
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe.
Yes, kind of merged together. So was there a stop that far east? Is this coast to coast that they were establishing these restaurants and places to eat along the trailway? Or was it just certain areas?
The first one, I believe, was in Florence, Kansas.
Florence, Kansas.
And it was basically an eating house and a restaurant at that point in time. But as they expanded, of course, when you came out into the West, things were a little bit different back then. There were no facilities. Let's say if you hired waitresses where they were going to stay, because at that point, most females were working in saloons and things like that.
Oh.
And so when he established these eating houses, originally they were staffed by men. That's who was doing the serving. And back in the the late 1800s, there was a major fight in Raton. And the decision was made at that time that maybe they should remove men and bring in women. But it was finding women that would be suitable to bring out west.
So would you say this is the first women's movement?
Well, it was the first movement instigated by a man.
But it started creating some freedoms for women.
Yes, because at that time you were either a teacher or a nanny or, a wife. And the interviewing was all done back in Kansas City. And what they would do is they were very particular about the type of women. They wanted them young, attractive.
Had to be smart.
good morals. Yes.
Yeah, good morals. I read that.
Yes. And what they would do would be to train them. So they would take them out into these Harvey houses, and there were some Harvey houses that were used for training as they expanded over the years. And they would be in a program and then assigned to their permanent home. But they would also provide them with a place to stay. And normally that was upstairs of the Harvey houses is where they lived.
Was that kind of what prompted the hotel part of what they decided to do at some point? Was to have enough room at these stops that people would actually stay longer term?
Right, because the big hotels were like the Alvarado in Albuquerque. The last one built was La Posada in Winslow. There were several of them throughout Texas and, of course, Kansas.
So the Harvey girls were standing on the corner of Winslow, Arizona before the Eagles.
Yes, they could have been when they were out for a walk. But they had pretty strict rules, as they had to be in bed at a certain hour. And
so they were pretty controlled.
Yes, they were.
Now, did they just get room and board, or did they actually get paid to do this?
They got paid, and I think the average pay was somewhere like around $30 or $40 a month.
A month?
Yes, and but they had room and board. The uniforms had to be spotless. And what's interesting is that the uniforms were normally sent back to, the name's escaping me. They had a huge laundry in Kansas, in one of the smaller towns. And the railroad would, of course, pay to ship all those back and have them cleaned and then bring them back to the Harvey houses. Now,
at one time, I was kind of a single guy, and I used to ride the railroads looking for single women.
Were you lucky?
No. Back in the day, were the gals allowed to be courted, let me use that word, courted by the gentlemen that they meet at the restaurants?
Technically, no. They had to sign a contract. I believe it was 6 months or something, where they had to commit. It was like signing up for the military.
Oh, wow.
So they had to make a commitment, and they weren't supposed to fraternize with the people.
So it was laid out. These are the rules. Live by them and not find your own way home.
Right, yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. And the stagecoach is down the road.
But, a lot of them did end up getting married. And basically, the joke was that Fred Harvey supplied, wives for the West.
Right.
Over time.
And that's kind of why I went there.
Yeah.
Just didn't know how to approach. Okay. So Fred Harvey, he's got, how big is this empire, when he gets going? I mean, at its peak, how many restaurants did he have?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but
Sure.
That did not occur during his time.
Okay.
He had already passed, and his son Ford took over. And a lot of the expansion happened under at that time.
And is that when...
Because he died in 1901.
Right.
Is that when Mary Coulter got more involved in design and architecture for hotels and that part of the business?
She got involved. I mean, there's, a lot of speculation. Was she really an architect? But she did do designs. But then the Santa Fe Railroad hired architects to implement the designs.
Okay.
Because it was the Santa Fe Railroad who built the Harvey houses. Because Fred had a pretty good agreement. They built the Harvey houses, and he just went in and supplied the restaurant.
He was an operator.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's almost like, for lack of a better, they leased the space, and he got to move his restaurant in, and it was his job to employ them and to make sure that the quality of the food and the quality of the service was right up there with the Santa Fe Railroad, right?
Right. And, I mean, they were strict. I mean, you were taught exactly how to set the table, how to set down plates, clear the plates.
My mother must have been a Harvey girl.
But and, always be polite.
Yeah.
And they had like lunch counters in a lot of the Harvey houses, and then they had formal dining rooms.
So there's some pretty huge places that are associated with Harvey House. The Harvey restaurants and all that. Grand Canyon's one of them. We talked.
Correct.
What are the other ones That
La Fonda.
La Fonda, and tell me a little
Santa
bit about
Fe.
that. Where's that
La
at?
Posada.
La Fonda and Santa Fe.
Santa Fe. Okay.
It's on the plaza in
And
Santa
then
Fe.
there's one more that's left, right? Is that what you
La
said?
Posada.
La Posada. Now, is there any in existence from Kansas to here anymore? Is there any of that stuff there? And what I mean in existence is like they're obviously the Grand Canyon operates out of some of the stuff that was built previously, right? So are there still buildings standing throughout the United States?
Yes, in fact, it's pretty innovative what the Boleyn Harvey House has done. Are you familiar with Boleyn?
I'm not.
Boleyn is in New Mexico. It's about 30 minutes south of Albuquerque.
Okay.
And it was a small Harvey house. They had a lunch counter and a dining room. And the Harvey girls lived upstairs. And, of course, like most of the other ones, it got into disuse. And a woman, Maureen McMillan, was who lived in the town at that time, felt a need to save that Boleyn Harvey house, and she was instrumental in keeping it intact and not being demolished like so many of them were. Well, what has happened over that time is it was turned into a museum, but now, under the current leadership of Frances Zeller, she has turned what used to be dining area and lunchroom into a restaurant called the Whistle Stop.
Okay.
And they serve, I think, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the food there is incredible. It's all made in their small kitchen that is basically in a little hallway that where the steps are to go upstairs to where the Harvey girls were. And then what they have upstairs is each room is basically a little glimpse back in time of the history of Boleyn.
Huh. I have to ask something that's just popping through my mind. So it's the Harvey house. Is that Harvey was his first name? Was it Fred Harvey? Was it Paul Harvey?
Fred Harvey.
So, okay. Well, so I keep popping these different Harveys in my head and trying to go, which one is it? So it's Fred Harvey. Was there not a grocery store with Fred Harvey on it? I'm out of my mind. Cut that out. Okay.
Well, they call some of the things up, let's see, Painted Desert. I think in the Petrified Forest, they might have like a store called the Fred Harvey
I think so.
store.
And that
I
might
think
be where
that's
I'm
where
coming
it
from
is.
because my wife was a ranger at the Petrified Forest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that cool? And so we always have to go through there anytime we travel that area because, well, that's what you do as a husband, right?
So you've been at the Painted Desert Inn then?
I have.
And that was something else that she was involved with
Okay,
when they
so let's-
renovated that.
So you say she wasn't necessarily a architect, but she was a visionary maybe, and she would and she was creative, and she put a lot of process through it, but she didn't actually run the construction part of it. Is that more of a...
Oh, no, she was very involved, particularly Hopi House and Desert View at the Grand Canyon. She was on site basically instructing. She had, I know for sure, Hopi and maybe Navajo Native Americans laying the stones for Hopi House and Desert View. And she was very particular as to how those stones were all being placed. In fact, she came back one day to Desert View, I believe, and had them rip out all the work because it didn't meet her standards.
But working for you, Bollinger.
Yeah, right.
But everything that she did, she created a story behind them. And what is amazing about her work is it has such a sense of place. And also she took advantage, like at La Posada, that was set up with airflow. Like there's the orangery, which that's set up that you can open the doors and air will flow through there, and then it goes up through an access to the second floor. So there's
Oopsie, okay.
so there's more airflow up there, and it's just incredible.
Which one? And tell me if she designed this one or not. It's the one that looks like a castle tower. Do you know this?
Are you talking about the
At the Grand
Watchtower?
Canyon?
The Watchtower.
The Watchtower.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
at the Grand
Yes, she
Canyon.
did that.
She did that.
Yes.
And that thing has stood the test of time.
Well, yes, and she also had Fred Cabote come in, who he's a Hopi, and do a lot of the paintings that are on the wall, and just the whole story behind that. And Desert View is now in the process. The Park Service is doing collaboration with the tribes that are associated with the Grand Canyon to bring them more into it. They took it over from Xanterra. And Xanterra, when you would go into the Kiva room of the watchtower, it was like you had to walk around the tables and stuff with all the stuff made in China sitting on them. And they cleared all of that out. And now they have demonstrations in there by the different Native American artists. And they have dances. And they're in the process of doing a Native American welcome center up there.
So again, educate me here, Grand Canyon, obviously it was land owned by Native Americans prior to us being here, right? Is there any proof of that? Do they still have rights to the Grand Canyon? I know it's a national park, but you're laughing at me. That's not good.
It's not that. It's they were there thousands of years before we came along, the Spanish, and then the other people.
You mean white people didn't own it for the beginning of time?
No, that's just another illusion. But
we had to get that in there.
I had to get that in there. Sorry.
Yeah.
I said it, you didn't.
But the Havasupai are still down in the canyon, living there.
Have you been there?
No, I've never
Take the
hiked
helicopter
down there.
Take the helicopter.
Well, that's another thing. In the helicopters, is about 400 flights a day that are going into that canyon, and so it kind of disrupts the silence and everything else. But it's also a means for the tribe to generate much needed income.
Okay, so a lot of those helicopter tours and stuff are run by the tribe?
No, they're private.
Just private, okay.
And another area, which...
It's just to get people down there to be able
to
utilize.
Touchdown, get out, look, go
I
back.
hiked. Going on record, I hiked.
Mary Coulter also did designs for what was formerly called Indian Gardens, which you stop in as you hike down to Phantom Ranch, which was another design of hers. And
is that the first stop with water, I think, Indian Gardens?
I'm not sure if it is or not. It might be.
It might be.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
But and she also designed cabins for down there, but they were never built. Well, part of this initiative with the tribes is the name was changed to the Havasupai, I think, or the Halapai.
Uh-huh.
But they changed the name of Indian Gardens.
I see.
So, and the Native Americans, before it became a national park, actually farmed down there.
Really?
They had fields down there. And have you read A Walk in the Park?
I'm in the middle of it.
Well, he talks quite a bit in that book. Kevin mentions quite a bit when you are hiking in the depths of the canyon, how you can see where people have lived there for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's still footpaths and things down there that
I read a part in that book. It was the beginning where they were talking about his hiking partner was hanging over the edge, and he felt that a rat had invaded his stomach through his skin while he was hanging there, and it was moving around his body.
Yes.
Okay. And I thought, okay, this book's for me, right? This is right. And it turned out that his body was cramping.
Oh, yeah.
And the cramping was moving so much, and it was cramping up. They could see it move throughout his body. And he was in serious trouble at that point.
Just dehydrated.
But it was not a rat. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had to read on. So, but yeah, that's an interesting part of that book. I mean, it's a true tell of what it's like to be there.
It's an amazing book.
It is. I agree.
Yeah, he was a speaker up at the Western National Park store about a month or two ago.
Tell me about Hermit's Nest at the Grand Canyon. Did she design that as well?
Yes.
Hermit's
And that has
Nest.
a story.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a story connected with that too. is that a hermit actually lived there, because she created a story for every one of her.
So was it a story or was it
design.
reality?
No, it was a story.
It was a story. Okay.
But that's also a beautiful piece. Like the fireplace in there is amazing.
It was under construction behind it, so they weren't allowing them to do a fire at that time that I was there last time. But it's one of the coolest places that you can go, just where it looks out. It's just a neat place. It's one that I had never experienced before until my last trip. But if I would recommend to go there, it's worth a little bit of a hike, and it's worth going. I think the bus kind of
that's the last stop on the bus. Yeah, there's a funny story about that. We were in there one time, and it was in the winter. So there's a little ledge where you step up to the fireplace.
Yep.
So my husband and I were sitting there. He was drinking coffee. I had a cup of hot cocoa. So I set the cocoa down on the floor, and I accidentally kicked it, and it spilled. And I just thought it was like spilling coffee in the Sistine Chapel. I was just like mortified. And I said, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe I did it. And so we got paper towels and cleaned it up and everything. So the next trip to the canyon, what does he say? Well, let's go see if you left a stain. So,
did you?
No.
I would have left the stain. It would have been on me.
But, I just felt, it was like a sacrilege.
Right? You made your mark there forever, though.
Well, in my mind, I did. But one of her greatest, her last creation, and it has been restored magnificently, is La Posada. And unfortunately, that was completed just as the Depression happened.
Oh.
So it didn't, survive for very long. But her story behind that was there was a Don that came in, and he established this hacienda, and that's where his family lived. And then the Depression came, and hard times came, and so he had to start renting out rooms. So that was her story.
Yeah,
she
was a marketer. She was marketing her property through stories that were going to last for a long time.
Yes.
And now people like me want to go see these places because of those stories, true or not, because, that's part of the history, right? She's a marketer.
Right. And unfortunately, the only reason why La Posada survived the wrecking ball was the construction. It was going to be more expensive to tear it down than it was to leave it sit there. So the Santa Fe Railroad took it over, and their offices were in there. And Alan Alfelt and his wife Tina Mignon and Dan Lutzig came up. I think Alan read about it in an architectural magazine that it was threatened. And they went and looked at it and decided, these three people who had no experience decided they were going to take on this project and started restoring it.
Isn't that amazing? When human beings actually are going to do something positive, it takes three people to put their mind together, accomplish something like that, and save history.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's saving history.
It is.
And whether the generation gets it nowadays on why to go there and why to go visit that, one of my best memories as a child is stopping at everything from between here and Kansas, because we travel back and forth.
You still are a roadside attraction kind of guy.
I am a roadside attraction guy. I mean, why not, right? I'll give some. Listen, I stopped at the dinosaur tracks right outside the Grand Canyon. I'm not sure that's real, but in my head,
it is real.
It is real.
Oh,
is it real? You think it's...
In fact, when I was up there in March with our friends from Scotland, a Hopi friend of mine took me back there and then back to the petroglyphs.
Right.
Are you talking about the ones down by Tuba?
Yeah.
Yeah, she took us back in there, and then we went back to the petroglyphs.
Right? And that stuff's everywhere if you know where to find it, if you have the right people. Because we don't want to tell everybody where all this stuff is, because somebody, unfortunately, will make a poor decision and do something not very smart, and then we won't have it there. I'm being very, very polite, aren't I? Okay. Some bonehead's going to go carve his name in next to the petroglyphs, and that happens all the time. But that's kind of why we have to keep these things low key. Okay. But the amount of history that's in Arizona, and I didn't realize that Kansas is where really it started, where their headquarters were, the Harvey girls and stuff like that, because obviously the railroad was back there. So I really never tied those pieces together, which is my family's portion of them are from Kansas. Jackson's from Kansas. It's just kind of that's how Arizona is, right?
Missouri side of Kansas.
I'm sorry.
Well, plus Chicago too. Chicago,
City.
they had. I think they had
The
offices
Chiefs.
in Chicago too.
So, all right. So we have this big operation after the fact. We've got, I don't know how many dining cars. We've got restaurants. Okay. How was all that managed? Did the dining cars were managed by the railroads, or was it basically the Harvey Corporation that was trying to grow and to try to increase it that handled it all, or was it a partnership?
Well, it was a partnership. Harvey was brought in, like the Santa Fe Railroads owned the Harvey houses, but he ran them
Right.
and managed them. And then he also, when the Santa Fe Railroad started providing service on the trains, he got involved with that. And there was the turquoise room. And
Sounds spendy.
yeah, well, it probably was back in those days. And then Mary Coulter was asked to design dinnerware. And that's where she came up with the Membreno dinnerware.
Well, I'm
that
glad
she
you brought up
designed.
dinnerware, because you brought some pretty cool examples here of dinnerware that is almost identical to what it was back then. Or
Oh,
are
it
these
is.
original
It is.
pieces?
No, oh no, original pieces I couldn't afford. Well, but
Even
those,
this is pretty neat.
it is, and they're all done by HF Course here in Tucson. And it took them several years to get the licensing to be able to produce them. And they've been slowly adding specialty pieces. I just brought the smaller pieces. But,
And they still hand paint all of that stuff.
well, a lot of it's decals.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
on,
really?
on this.
Oh, on this. They
The
do
hand
hand paint a
painting-
lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, have you ever done the tour?
I haven't done the tour.
Is it
I need
here?
to do the yeah, it's here.
It's done.
Down off of like
I had a
South
podcast
22nd, kind of over by where the
It's across
old
the
mail depot.
It's across the street from the post office.
Okay.
Yeah, they used to be on Palo Verde, but when you watch those girls hand paint, they've got a wheel, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be all over the place.
yeah.
But
Steady
on
hand.
this, it's decals, which first of all they have to design the decals, and then apply them. But these pieces are all triple fired, and they have a complete like dinner set. And now they're starting to make individual pieces. Like this was called a celery dish. This is
can
an
see it.
ice cream dish that they just
Gotta put your
developed in
spoon
the
there.
last year. Correct. And then, of course, a ramekin.
Oh, so the designs on them, are they regional, or is was it kind of a Southwest pattern all the way across the railroad at the time? Was it like for Kansas, was there sunflowers on them, or was it the Southwest design?
This was
all the way through?
designed for the railroad initially.
So no matter where it was at, this was this is what it looked like.
Well, at least the turquoise room of the trains, but there were different patterns
Okay.
in different Harvey houses.
Okay.
So it just kind of depended.
Where the location was.
Right.
I was always curious. I don't know if you've ever been to Kansas, and I have relatives there. They're kind of obsessed with the Southwest a little bit in more ways than you can think. And I was kind of curious. The reason I asked that question, could this be the cause of that? Because, this is their vision of Southwest. This is their vision of Arizona. And all of a sudden they all live here now, which is okay, because we love any type of visitors. But this is gorgeous. And so these are modern pieces. You can buy them, and they look like the original Harvey house.
Yeah.
In the train
And
station.
Mary
Right.
Coulter designed these designs.
Right. Yes, because there's
Well, look at that.
well, besides Arnold Burke's book, which this is how I got to know Mary Coulter. I always say I discovered Mary Coulter on a little bookshelf at La Posada.
Well, they called her an architect.
Yes, but there's
We're going to vote her as an architect.
She's
That's
an architect.
the three of us
well,
decided.
and back then there weren't that many females. That
Well,
were
I didn't want to bring
considered
that up because I didn't want to
architects.
get hit upside the head with a book.
No, I wouldn't.
No,
do
Matt
that
would.
because we're still in a learning process. But
Thank you.
but back when she was an architect, I think there was like only 22
Oh, wow.
that were.
Is this her?
Yes.
So she wasn't. How old was she when she did all this?
Oh, let's see. Well, she was born in 1869, and she died in 1958. And shortly before she died, one of her last creations, which was the El Navajo that was in Gallup, New Mexico, was demolished. And unfortunately, she lived long enough to see that.
Oh, that probably broke her heart.
Yeah.
So the book is the book's just basically all about Mary and what she's done. Does it talk about the dishware? Does it talk about everything about Mary?
Yes.
It's
a very definitive book. In fact, I read it when I first got it, and that's how I got enthralled with Mary Coulter. And then later on, through reading this, that led me into the Harvey Girls.
Got it.
Which I read about the Harvey Girls, and then it took you into Fred Harvey. So I kind of backed in through Mary
When
Coulter.
are you going to write a book? Because I was checking out your social media there, and you've got some followers, my friend.
True, but unfortunately, where the pressure is on me to write a book, and I always say I know too many authors because I have a lot of author friends. I said, no, I know the struggles. I don't want to do that.
Spend your time wisely. I get it.
But like I said, unfortunately, the book people want me to write is from a caregiver's perspective for dementia.
Oh,
so
okay.
I would say on that, I'm not an expert, but I am extremely knowledgeable.
Anybody that's lived it probably understands it more
Yes.
so than anybody that could write about it and never lived it. I get you.
There's a lot of pressure on me. When's the book coming out? And it's just like, no, not me.
But you are spending your time. Like I said, your Facebook page is amazing.
Yes.
I started following that once I heard you were going to be on, and you get people to interact.
It is incredible because when I first started out, it was a local person here came to me, probably 14 years ago, and asked me to do her social media for her.
I love it.
And so I agreed to be her, and I have been for about 14 or 15 years now. And so I decided, well, if I can do that, maybe I'll do this. But I wasn't very active on it. And I give my full credit to Roger Naylor. His wife knows about this. His mistress is Mary Coulter.
Oh, okay.
He is obsessed with her.
Breaking news here on the news.
Yeah.
This just in.
You might ask him about that next time you talk
without
to him.
a doubt. I guarantee you.
And he was doing an article on Mary Coulter, and he came across my Facebook page, and he said, I wanted to interview you, but it's not very active. And so I credit him entirely for being where I am today.
So he lit your fire a little bit and got you moving.
I just thought, he's right. I either shut this down or I get involved. So every day at 7:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, a new post goes up. It takes a lot of time and a lot of research, and some of the things I stay away from to diminish controversy, but some things, in spite of it.
Everybody has an opinion.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Like I say, it takes a lot of research, and I enjoy doing it. And the greatest gift that I've gotten from it is the friendships.
Yeah.
Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be friends with Arnold Burke and get to know him. And then also Richard Lucken, who wrote this book, and meeting Stephen Freed, who wrote Appetite for America. But most of all is the relationship I have with the Harvey family.
Oh.
Which is just a gift.
And so do they pop in your social media from time to time, or they just reach out to you directly?
It's more of a friendship.
Yeah.
They interact more on my personal Facebook page than they do on the Fred Harvey page.
How is that a gift? That's amazing. Right? Here's your passion, and all of a sudden the family has embraced you as well.
Yeah, and to me, it's been wonderful because the family is just incredible. And everybody in the Harvey family today came from just one of Fred Harvey's sons, which was Byron.
Do you feel that the Harveys help shape the West by bringing, basically, I hate to put it this way, but they bringing young single women out to the West, gave them employment, guaranteed that they'd have to work for so long, got them a stable situation, and then all of a sudden they're safe, which is huge, right? Because
Right.
if they're on a wagon train or anything else you can think, maybe they wouldn't get treated as well. But all of a sudden now we've got some well-mannered young ladies, attractive, respectful, willing to work hard. All of a sudden we have a West that's not as unruly, because no matter what, women run this world. I don't care what anybody says. All right. And all right. And
Well, we birth all of you.
that's right. Pretty much. And so once it takes me a few years to figure that out, then I think it reshapes the whole country as they move across the United States, even all the way to Arizona. Now, did the Harvey girls did they ever expand into California at all?
Yes, there was in the railroad stations. They had places, and I believe there are a couple Harvey houses in different places in California also.
So were they? I gotta just ask: were they franchises or were they all owned?
They were
They were all owned and controlled by Santa Fe Railroad and the Harveys.
correct.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So
They ran.
So it wasn't just, hey, we have a Harvey house. Here you go. Good luck.
So how did that deal come about? I mean, did Fred Harvey have a relationship with somebody important with the Santa Fe Railroad, or was it just his idea?
I think initially he was selling newspapers on the trains.
Okay.
And then he, got into realizing that the food wasn't that good, and he opened up the first restaurant.
So out of necessity.
And
more than anything, yeah.
he was very demanding. It was, white tablecloth service, which you didn't have back in those days. It was clean.
Yep.
The food was good. Everything was brought in fresh. And he negotiated an amazing contract with the Santa Fe because they shipped everything for free. He didn't have to pay for laundry to ship back and forth. He didn't have to pay for his food to come back and forth. Over the years, he established farms in areas where he could
Sources,
get
food.
his food and eggs and everything else. And like, for instance, in Arizona, there were Del Rio Farms, which is down, well, it's now Chino Valley, but was outside of Prescott. And that's where the mules went to spend the winters. And they also grew a lot of fruits and vegetables and the eggs that were used. And,
Interesting.
There's different parts of the country. There's laundry facilities and just different areas that he would source from.
All right. 3 points. 1, how rich did he get off this? 2, was he considered the first restaurant chain? And I forgot the third, so let's go with the other 2.
We'll go with 2.
We'll go with 2
things.
instead of 3, and I'm sure I'll come up with it.
Well, basically, it was. I mean, he set the standards for like the Howard Johnsons and everything else. And the progression in this country was, you went from the wagons to the railroad and then to planes. And when the flying started, he had a restaurant in the Albuquerque airport. He had one in the little airport. I don't think he had one in Winslow because he had the Harvey House there. But he provided food to some of the airports as that transitioned.
Those little airport restaurants are good. I don't know if you've ever stopped at a little airport, but usually they're really good. So
There's still one in Winslow.
Right.
But Winslow also has the Turquoise Room. Have you ever eaten in there?
No, but I may have to now that you brought it up.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. Alan recruited the first chef in there when Alan got the restaurant up and running was John Sharp. He brought him in from California, and John had quite a few restaurants there. And he put the Turquoise Room on the map.
So now is that in a train car or is it actually a freestanding building?
It's inside La Posada.
Okay.
And they have, besides the rooms in La Posada, they have, of course, the restaurant. And they also have a museum now. They converted the Santa Fe building there into, which is now the El Falcon Museum. And they also have a dining car that was a turquoise room dining car sitting out on the tracks that they're in the process of remodeling. In fact, I think I have a post going up in the next day or so about that.
Oh, cool.
And I think it would be fun if they could convert that back and you could have private parties in there.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
And then the restaurant could.
What is your favorite park as far as state or national?
Oh, it would have to be the Grand
The
Canyon.
Grand Canyon. That
I
would
don't
be.
know how anybody would answer that differently.
Roger says Chiricahua.
He did,
Oh, the Chiricahuas are amazing.
but he has his own spot in
Yeah.
the Grand Canyon that he
Yeah.
goes to.
Right.
But I mean, then there's Zion and Bryce, and I mean, we're just so fortunate. That's, you know, you could spend your whole life just visiting national parks.
Oh.
Rocky Mountain National Park. That kind of reminds me of the Grand Canyon.
So if what I suggest, if you visit parks in Arizona, get out of your car. Get out of your
yes.
car. Take a path. Take a walk. Saguaro National Monument. I see more people just driving through there like, oh, and they haven't seen anything. They've seen a few saguaros. There's some really, really cool saguaros to find and some really cool views. Javelina Rock is one of them. Go sit up there at sunset. I mean, there is a place for everybody.
That's
in
my
Saguaro National Park.
backyard. I
Is
live
it? Yeah.
across the street from the park.
So it's but get out and experience it. Go to the Grand Canyon. You know, like I've always said, my first visit, my dad took me and we did this. Yep, Grand Canyon. Got back in the car and went home. We were
Oh,
there
that
all-
was my
We were there
dad,
for
too.
6 minutes. I mean, and then we picked up something in Flagstaff and had to be back to Tucson the same day. No, at least he took me, number one. All right, I don't want to sell him short, but that's all we knew. Little did we know if we would have just driven a little further in and a little further than that and a little further than that, the park would have been a totally different look.
Well, plus back probably when you were younger and me, you
1985.
could drive, but now you're restricted. The
Yes.
only time you can drive the rim road is basically in the wintertime when the shuttles are shut down. But the rim walk, you can walk from Yavapai down to Hermit's Rest, just along the rim, and it's incredible. And there's not that many people
No.
on that rim walk.
We have electric bikes, pedal assist.
Oh yes.
Amazing to do. Amazing. All right. We're about ready to close here, but I wanted to ask one more question. It's a little controversial, and if you're not comfortable answering it, I totally understand. In the state of our political situation now, the concern is national parks shrinking. Do you think that's really going to happen? Because I think it's such a rub in my house. My wife adores national parks, and it's one of those things that are just sticking. And my concern is national parks are going to shrink. Opportunities to save history is going to shrink. It's just going to start domino effect. What is your thought on this? I mean, do you think it's a necessity to keep the national parks or expand them?
National parks are permanent, aren't they? It would be probably budgets that would get hacked.
No, I think they're looking to shrink parks so they can drill for oil.
Oh,
You're correct.
I'll say it.
And
I haven't
that's
heard
one
that.
of the concerns.
Yes.
In fact, quite a few years ago, the Navajo Nation was approached to build a, what do you call it?
Refinery?
No, they wanted a tram down into the canyon.
Oh.
Yeah.
And that was a huge controversy, and it would have brought in a lot of money to the Navajo Nation. And fortunately, it did get defeated. It would have created 400 jobs, but it also would have necessitated a huge facility down there to collect waste and haul it out on a daily basis. And there would be helicopter rides and everything else. All it takes is an executive order to possibly rescind some of the protections that the national parks have right now because of people wanting access to what's under the ground.
And to commercialize. Who would have thought that the Navajo were the protectors of our earth? I mean, in any tribe, I guess, because they had the clear enough head to go, no tram, and no, this doesn't need to happen here. And
It was close.
yeah, and no, okay. I kind of agree with you, and people think I'm crazy. I think they should eliminate helicopters from the Grand Canyon. Anything industrial. I'm not even real thrilled about the walk that they have. You know, the glass one that goes around. I don't even think that should be there, but who am I to dictate what somebody does with their land? But there's just so much beauty that just needs to be preserved in this state and other states. We haven't even scratched the surface in my family of seeing it, but just for my state, leave my state alone. Let this, you know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be one person's job ever. And again, I don't want to get political, to be able to sign a piece of paper and say, okay, let's shrink this back and let's drill. That needs to come from the people.
Well, the national parks, when you think about it, and this is one thing like Roger says,
Yes.
you know, we can go visit it almost whenever we want.
Yes.
But people spend a lot of money coming here and spending time in our parks. I mean, it's a real treasure.
Yes.
And the fact that we have been able to protect them so long, and it would just be sad. I mean, when you look back on what happened, particularly with the downwinders, when we were drilling for uranium in Arizona and New Mexico. I mean, we're going to live with the damage that we did to people for generations. So many people were impacted and have died because of that.
Well, we won't probably have an instant impact here, but what I do believe is our kids and our kids' kids, you know, will be impacted on all these decisions that were made. Your guys, our production crew here, they're of that age. Their kids are going to be the one affected. I just happen to be passionate about it because I fell in love with Arizona, fell in love with the Grand Canyon, and my wife kind of forced me to. But, you know, it was either camp or don't camp.
Yeah, quickly, just show the books.
Yeah, show the books
Okay.
up. Just hold up the book. I think your camera's over there. Yeah, and that's the Mary Coulter book. And where can those be bought? Can it be anywhere, right? Amazon, anywhere?
Well, the issue is finding them, and unfortunately, I know for sure it's not available. Well, it should be available on Amazon, but and I think in La Posada, it might be in their bookstore, which
Okay.
they have. And
And that
then
one?
there's Richard Lucken wrote this book. He's and it's all about Mary Coulter's Membrino dinnerware. And it has all the patterns in here and the history. And this book was out of print. And I started a campaign quite a few years ago to have it reproduced. And in order to do that, Richard had to have a commitment as how many books would be sold. And we couldn't get enough people to commit to it. I worked on that for quite a bit of time. But then, fortunately, Alan Alfelt had them reproduced and sold.
Oh, good.
And then
So, guys,
Yeah, and shout out to HF Coors.
HF
for bringing
Coors,
it back.
which is local here. So every HF Coors product is locally produced in the United States. Every piece of it.
I knew nothing about them.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
And so now that you've brought this book out, Matt's going to find it and he's going to go hunting for this dishware. I guarantee you he's going to go try to find one.
Well, if you
Bloodhound, man.
well, the easiest way is to go down to HF Coors. But if you find the originals, bring your checkbook.
Give you a call.
No, they're extremely expensive.
So in the thousands or the hundreds?
It kind of depends because it depends on how rare they are. Because these were kind of hard to find. And a friend of mine, which her father was a huge Fred Harvey collector, and he has a complete set of them.
Wow.
Nice. Very cool.
So, but she has a complete set of
That'll end up in a museum somewhere, I'm sure.
And don't tell me this. My wife can't listen to this podcast because, like, she gets antique glass, Moon and Stars, I think it's called, and we have literally 20 boxes full of Moon and Star glass that has not seen the light of day. So she gets turned on to this. We'll have to get another storage room.
Quantity, not quality.
I think that we're missing the punch bowl.
It's like my dad.
We're missing the punch bowl.
He's quantity guy. Anyway, I'll keep my eye out.
Yeah, I know down in my mind.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rare pieces that, you know, some of the museums, like the New Mexico History Museum in Santa Fe it was a temporary display, but I think it's been up over 10 years, but it's on Fred Harvey. They talk about the family, different pieces. Skip Gentry, who is the person who was the collector, his daughter has lent a lot of his pieces to the New Mexico History Museum. Like, he saved one of the original signs for the Alvarado Hotel that was in Albuquerque that was torn down because it just couldn't be saved. It was too expensive. It was full of asbestos.
Oh. Do you have a few glasses of wine and decide to eat dinner off this?
But well, that's called the celery dish. But I do. It is my everyday.
Is it? Okay, that's where I was getting.
Because when that came out, I just thought like I needed another set of dishes. But I had to get a complete set.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very beautiful.
Cool.
It is. And what's nice is we're fortunate we don't have to pay for shipping here. We can just
That's
go down
true.
and buy it.
Right.
But listen, Kathy, what an amazing guest you are. You just your amount of knowledge, just sitting here and listen. We were just shooting questions at you that were
Yeah, a
silly.
lot of them I weren't prepared for. So when my fans listen to the podcast, any errors are my fault.
Oh no! Trust me. Let them blame me. Okay, I get blamed for everything around here, so might as well. I'm used to it. What's the name of your Facebook page?
The Fred Harvey Mary Coulter Fan Club.
Which is amazing, and
Thank you.
I think everybody should go check that out. Just it's the history alone, the conversations alone are just. It's just you can learn something from everybody out there, and you're right. They do let you know, but the cool thing is nobody gets upset if they let you know. And there's like, oh, hey, think of it this way. It's a really good resource for both of those. I'm John Smith. This is the Rumble with Matt and John. Thanks again, Kathy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
If you have any questions about today's show, feel free to reach out to us directly at smithandbollinger@longrealty.com. And always remember, we're here for you for all your real estate needs. Whether it's residential, commercial, investment, or land, we got you covered.